In this installment, we're going to be going over Thursday night football matchup between the New Orleans Saints going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Let's get into it. Hey, yo! Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Chef D, and I'm here to give you the winning ingredients for your Thursday night football matchup between the Arizona Cardinals and the New Orleans Saints. But before I deep dive into this Thursday night football matchup, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter at MessageSD. Don't forget about the TikTok at Chef_D91. And don't forget about the Patreon if you want more DFS, betting, and fantasy football help. All those links will be provided down below. The first thing we're going to do is check the injury report before we go into the slate and dive into the captains. Now, we're looking at the Arizona Cardinals right now. We already know about Marquise Brown. He's going to be out for a significant amount of time, probably around that 6 weeks range with his foot injury. James Conner is going to be most likely out. Did not practice Monday, did not practice Tuesday. We have a couple outs right here with Dennis Gardeck. Rodney Hudson is a big hit here. And if we're looking at Rodney Hudson and Justin Pugh, two key parts of that offensive line, all right, they have been pressured at an all-time high rate, 34% pressure rate as soon as Rodney Hudson and Justin Pugh were not on that field. So as you saw, Seattle was able to get to Kyler Murray at a consistent basis in that game. So that might be a factor in this Saints game, especially going up against that defensive line in the Saints. All right, other guys to look at, Matt Prater is probably going to be out, so that's Matt Amendola as the kicker. And then we have Eno Benjamin. Eno Benjamin is trending towards playing. Darrell Williams is not going to play as well. They're going to hold him back. Eno Benjamin should be the guy that will start in this game as the #1 running back. All right, going to the New Orleans Saints, where there's not going to be any Michael Thomas and there's not going to be any Jarvis Landry. That's a big hit. No Andrews Pete. That's a big hit. Adam Troutman. That's a big hit to the tight end position. But there's going to be some more playing time for Juwan Johnson and Taysom Hill. We'll get to them a little bit later in our flex plays. Mark Ingram limited. He's fine. Marshawn Lattimore is trending towards not playing. So that could be a boost to DeAndre Hopkins and Rondell Moore and the other guys that they have for the Cardinals. Everyone else should be fine. So the only big thing we're waiting on is between Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton. They're looking at holding back Jameis Winston yet again in this short week. Andy Dalton did pop up on the injury report with a back, but he had back-to-back limited practices, and he is starting with the ones in practice. So that's going to be leaning towards Andy Dalton being the starting quarterback for Thursday. So let's look at these captains. Obviously, we're going to start at the top, and we're going to start with Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is going to be our Konami Code quarterback because he has so much upside. As you can see, 23 fantasy points against Carolina, 26 against the Raiders, and 20 against the Kansas City Chiefs. This man can do it by himself, all right? So I have no problems putting him in the captain spot because I know he can create with his arm and he can create with his legs. He had 100 rushing yards against the Seattle Seahawks. This is what happens when you have no guard and no center. People are coming through. Kyler was forced to get out of that pocket and run. He had a long of 42 yards. That was very impressive to see. And if we're looking at fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks, the Saints are allowing big plays. That's the problem. So if we're looking at wide receivers, the Saints are all the way down here at 26th ranked against opposing wide receivers, okay? They're giving up almost nearly 200 yards to wide receivers and about 1.2 touchdowns a game. So, and that red zone rank is only 4th. That means they're allowing big passing plays to occur, similar to what we saw last week against Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase was able to pop some big receptions. And if we're going against fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks, Saints are down here 20th, 236 yards, and are allowing around 1.5 TDs a game. So this is a prime spot for Kyler Murray to get things going, all right? He did not throw a touchdown in week 6. He's definitely going to throw one, probably two, maybe definitely one, hopefully two in this game, maybe even more. We will see. I know he's going to be happy to have DeAndre Hopkins back, so we're going with Kyler Murray at that captain spot. Alvin Kamara is in a good situation here in this game with Andy Dalton starting at the helm. He's been receiving more receptions, so we got back-to-back games of 6 and 9 targets for Alvin Kamara. He's getting the bulk share of the rushing attempts. We had 23 and 19. Almost nearly back-to-back games of over 100 rushing yards. So Alvin Kamara is looking phenomenal right now. And if we're looking at fantasy points allowed to running backs, we're going to go here. We're going to scroll down to these Arizona Cardinals. They are allowing 4.4 yards a carry, 80 yards a game, all right? So Arizona Cardinals run defense, not that bad. It's pretty solid, middle in the range right here. It's currently 11th, not allowing 90 to 100 yards. There's other teams that are, and we'll get to the Saints because they are as well. And if we're looking at these snap counts, we're going to look at snap counts here. Alvin Kamara is sharing a backfield with Mark Ingram. So 69% of the snaps are going to Alvin Kamara. The other 33% is going to Mark Ingram. So that could be a sneaky flex play to Mark Ingram. We'll get to him in about a second, okay? So we got Alvin Kamara, we got Kyler Murray, and now we have DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins back in his first game. He has served his suspension. This man has been freaking waiting to explode, and this is an opportunity where he can. I just showed you fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. We're going to go back to that yet again. And the Saints are allowing huge plays, all right? They're allowing huge plays, and you got a big number one top tier wide receiver here in DeAndre Hopkins that has just been waiting to explode. 26 ranked, 188 yards, 2 opposing wide receivers, 1.2 touchdowns. This can be a game where as soon as Hopkins gets on the field, this can be a big performance for him. He might be lesser owned. A lot of people might be touchy-feely on him, scared to play him in his first game. I'm not going to be scared to play him in this first game. This is a must-win situation for Arizona. They have played poorly in the last couple weeks. They need their top-tier talent in DeAndre Hopkins. No Marquise Brown is going to be another hit to that wide receiver core, so they're going to need DeAndre Hopkins alongside of Rondale Moore that are going to need to put up some fantasy points, all right? So Hopkins is fine as a captain. We're waiting on news for the quarterback. It's leaning towards Andy Dalton, but either way, I am not starting a New Orleans Saints quarterback at the captain spot. Definitely not. And it's probably not going to be played in the flex at all either. So I want to stay away from the quarterback situation with Winston and Andy Dalton for the New Orleans Saints. There's not enough volume there. They've become more of a running team. As you can see, Kamara getting 19 to 20 touches. And he's being very, very used at a high rate in the receiving game as well. The person that we're going to go to next for that captain spot will be Eno Benjamin. If we're looking at Tuesday's injury report, he was limited, okay? He was limited Tuesday. We'll see what happens Thursday. Wednesday. He is trending towards playing. He's going to be the number one running back. He gets a second chance to be the number one running back. This man is super, super explosive. He let people down in week 6, 15 for 37. All right, but we did see the catching upside as well. 3 for 3 targets and 28 yards. This man has a ton of upside, all right? Go back to the well. I love him as a captain. Eno Benjamin, let's go. Let's go to Eno Benjamin snaps. 87% snap share. This man is doing it by himself, okay? When you see a running back getting 80% over, that's like Saquon Barkley numbers. That's like Christian McCaffrey numbers, okay? Eno Benjamin is going to get a ton of touches, a ton of looks, a ton of upside, and this is a much easier run defense. Let's go to fantasy points allowed to running backs. And as you can see, these Saints, despite the fact that they are 8th in the league, don't look at that. Look deeper. 100 yards. They allow 100 yards a game to the running back position, 4.6 yards a carry. If you want to just take that stat of 100 yards a game, this team is, bottom 10. 1, 2, 3. They are bottom 10 in the league, okay? They're allowing over 100 yards a game to that running back position, and we got a guy that's going to get 87% of the touches. All right, so this is a great spot for Eno Benjamin. Love him as a captain. All right, James Conner is out. Michael Thomas is out. The next position we're going to look at that can be a captain will be Chris Olave. Chris Olave is now the #1 wide receiver. It's going to be him and a cast of characters for the New Orleans Saints. In the last game that he played, had a very solid game against Seattle, 4 for 54 and a touchdown. Got you double-digit fantasy points. But one of the strengths, I do have to mention this, one of the strengths of this Cardinals defense is fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So if we're going to the Arizona Cardinals, they're top tier. They're number 6 in the league against fantasy wide receivers, only allowing 132 yards to that wide receiver position, 0.3 touchdowns. They do not allow touchdowns to the wide receiver. They're giving it up running backs. They're giving it up tight ends, but not to the wide receiver. So, especially we got Andy Dalton as a quarterback. I don't see him throwing that many touchdowns in this game. This could lower down some of the receiving options on that Saints side. But I do have to mention Chris Olave because he has upside. Very talented rookie wide receiver. All right. Next guy we're going to look at. Since we got question marks on Jameis and we got question marks on Andy Dalton, Taysom Hill can have a game. All right. We already seen it twice this season. 37 fantasy points against Seattle, and he had 15.3 against Atlanta in week 1. He also chipped in with a touchdown in week 4. So they're utilizing Taysom Hill at a very high rate. With Adam Trautman out, there's going to be more usage for Taysom Hill at that tight end position. Probably draw up some more different type of schemes and packages for Taysom Hill to get the ball. And then Juwan Johnson will become more of the main tight end in this offense for the New Orleans Saints. So Taysom Hill is a factor. And then last but not least, before we move on to the flex, we have Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is one of the most consistent pass catchers in the league and on this team. All right. Now with Marquise Brown gone, we thought it was going to be Zach Ertz more of as a third option. No, Zach Ertz is still the second option in this offense, maybe even the first, because each and every week this man is getting double-digit targets. Week 2, 11 targets. Week 3, 10 targets. Week 5, 10 targets. Week 6, 10 targets. This is an easy dump-off pass for Kyler Murray around that 7 to 8, 9, 10-yard range. Zach Ertz is always there and open. He's getting the easy yardage and getting you the first down. I love Zach Ertz as an option for the tight end. Definitely a solid flex play. I would lock him in each and every lineup. Just have the very, very safe floor. All right. So now let's move on over to the flex play. We're going to clear these captains out and go over to the flex plays. The first guy we're going to talk about at the flex will be Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore is now the number 2 wide receiver. And we saw a season high for Rondale Moore last week with 10 targets. If we're looking at the snap count for the wide receiver in Rondale Moore, he saw 99% of the snaps. Okay, so we're getting a guy that's going to be stuck on that field. A lot of opportunities for him to catch the ball, and we saw it. We saw a nice result, 6 out of 10 for 49 yards. We're looking for more of a touchdown, but Rondale Moore is in a situation where they have no other options at wide receiver. Okay, they're waiting on Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson is going to get limited work. Obviously, this is his first game. He has to learn the offense. Rondale Moore, Zach Ertz, and DeAndre Hopkins are going to be guys that are going to be sticking on that field and have high usage to get fantasy points. All right. The next guy we're going to look at will be Tre'Quan Smith. Tre'Quan Smith is going to be this number 2 wide receiver. He saw a touchdown last week and only 3 targets. Not that much volume in the passing game for the New Orleans Saints. They're playing with a backup. They're more of a run team, and they have a struggling defense. So not a lot of things going for the Saints right now, but I do have to mention Tre'Quan Smith as a flex play. He has upside. We saw a big game from him against Carolina in week 3 for 17 fantasy points, and he had a touchdown last week against Cincinnati. So he has some upside at his current salary of $6,200. All right. Robbie Anderson is a newly acquired wide receiver. He's supposed to stretch the field. I'm not sure I'm trusting that play because this is his first game. They might just have him just doing go routes, and maybe he comes down with one. All right, maybe you get lucky, he comes down with one, and because, like I said, this Saints defense are allowing big plays to occur to that wide receiver position. So Robbie Anderson could be in the spot in his first game, already getting acclimated. All right, so we'll throw him in there. We'll definitely throw him in there. The next wide receiver would be Marquez Callaway. He saw the bulk of the targets if we're looking at the wide receivers. Didn't get it in the end zone last week, but we saw 7 targets, 36 yards. Not that much volume, all right? Target share, yes, it was high, but they are not throwing the ball at a very high clip for the New Orleans Saints. Marquez Callaway is going to be one of the lesser options at flex. If we're looking at defense and kickers, defensively, I'm more sticking towards the Cardinals. Cardinals have been playing solidly, pretty solid defense. As you see, no negative points here. They got a nice 12-point performance against Carolina on the road, and then 14-point performance against Seattle. I like what I saw against them, despite the fact they could not put up points. All right, and for the kickers, we're hoping that Arizona makes their decision to use their kicker, but I think they just don't trust Matt Amendola. They have not given him opportunities. They keep going for it on 4th down, and this is the reason why you lost in that Seattle game. You had 3 chances to kick a field goal. You went for it on 4th down, and you failed each and every time. So they do not trust Matt Amendola. I would not go with that option here, even though it's a perfect matchup. You can take the risk and take him because this is literally the worst matchup. This is the best matchup to have for a fantasy football kicker or a DFS kicker. Matt Amendola is in a great spot, but it's up to Cliff Kingsbury if he's going to decide to kick the field goal. I think he's learned his lesson. We'll throw him in there, right? Will Lutz on the other side. This is also a good spot for him. We saw him with double-digit fantasy points last week, 14 against Cincinnati. That's another good matchup. Cincinnati, they're 32nd in the league for fantasy points allowed to kickers. Will Lutz is someone we can go to. This, like I said, it's a struggling offense. As long as they get the ball to that other side of the field, if they're in the 30 or 40 range or 20, they're kicking that field goal with Will Lutz. I have no problem going with them. I like Cardinals defense as well. We'll throw them in there. And guys lower than the kickers in defense, we got Greg Dortch. He becomes the number 3 wide receiver. We'll see if they use him last week. If we're looking at wide receivers, Greg Dortch only saw 6%. We're probably going to lean more towards A.J. Green with 69. So A.J. Green becomes the next guy up, number 3. We're not looking at Greg Dortch. If you had to choose someone past Rondale Moore, past Hopkins, you can go to A.J. Green, but his numbers are really, really ugly. This veteran is a shell of himself, and A.J. Green is not a true love at the flex position, all right? Shaheed last week got a run and was able to get into the end zone. I do have to mention that. It was a pretty nice run, 44 yards. He's not a guy that's going to be getting a ton of targets. That was a dark play, and if you feel like you want to try that one more time for a second week in a row, fine by me. Adam Troutman's going to be not going to play for this game, so we can stay away from him. No Darrell Williams. Kirkwood is trending towards being out as well. So it's going to be between Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith, and Chris Olave. Those are going to be the 3 wide receivers for the Saints. And anyone under 1,000, there could be one in particular play. We have Keontae Ingram. Keontae Ingram is the backup running back. If anything happens to Eno Benjamin, he's the guy that's going to get the bulk of carries and touches. All right, so those are going to be the guys we're going to look for in the flex position. I do have to mention one more. Where's Juwan Johnson? Where is Mr. Johnson here? Juwan Johnson is the last flex play, okay? Now, with Troutman out, he's going to get the bulk of the targets and bulk of the touches and bulk of the snaps at that tight end position. Between him and Taysom Hill, Juwan Johnson saw an uptick, 6 targets last week, 4 for 41. Dalton likes his tight end. So if you had a sneaky flex play, I would go with Juwan Johnson, okay? So the guys that were going to mainstay in majority of our lineups that I really love for this particular slate between the Cardinals and the Saints is going to be Kyler Murray because of his upside. I love Alvin Kamara. DeAndre Hopkins I'm not scared to take him in his first game back. And Eno Benjamin. All right, so focus your lineups around these 4 guys. Eno Benjamin is going to see an 80+ snap share in this offense. I love his upside there. These are the guys you should focus on in the majority of your lineup. So thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter at MessNetJSD, and I'll be back with another video very soon. All right, peace out, guys.